Well, we all identify ourselves in different ways. Who are you? Are you a conservative person, an aggressive person? Are you quiet? Are you outgoing? There's so many ways that we define ourselves, and identity is just the culmination of the beliefs you have about who you are. But those beliefs control how you think, how you feel, what you perceive, how you interact with people, what you're willing to do, not willing to do. In fact, I'd submit to you that after 45 years of working with people in 195 countries all over this planet, from the most successful to the most challenged, the single most important element, if I want to understand what's driving that person, is to understand how they define themselves. Because, hear me now, the most powerful force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves.
You know, identity of a larger perspective is that we're all human. You know, we're all human no matter what. We're all human beings having this human experience. You know, we all, in certain contexts and certain references, may make different choices, you know. Does that make us good? Does that make us bad? No, I think that makes us human. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that makes us human.
It is that powerful a control system on how we function as human beings. So anything you attach the words I am to over and over again, consistency, with your language, with your emotion, and with an emotional intensity, you'll eventually become it, because it becomes a belief, and a belief is self-fulfilling. Whether you think you can, whether you think you can't, you're right. So I think a lot of men see identity as this is who I am, this is how I am. But for women, identity can often be a burden because there's so many. Now, I don't see it that way within myself, but some people, you know, it used to be easy. I'm a farmer, you know, I'm a mother. But today, you're the farmer, you're the mother, you're the community activist, right? You're the athlete, you're everything. There's so many pieces. And my hope, and the reason I'm having these two ladies take this over with you, is that when you're done with this, you'll start to question some of your old identities, some of the limitations those might bring. You know, so often people say, I'm not that kind of person. What kind of person? And when did you define yourself? A year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years, 30 years ago? Most people, it was a long time ago. And maybe at the end of this conversation, it's time to update your sense of identity. Maybe it's time to expand it. Maybe it's time to take some of the labels off that might limit you. Maybe it's time to look at some that you want to define yourself by as you move for the next 5 or 10 years of your life of growth and expansion.
And a lot of times these identities, it's like, gosh, you know, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife,
But I think it's important to understand how powerful this piece is. It can be used as a weapon to separate people. You're one of those. That's often what happens politically in the world we're in today. No matter what, right, left, center, it doesn't matter. I'm more of an independent myself, so it's a little bit easier to see, but even that, I see myself as independent. I want to be able to see both sides. Not everybody has that feeling. Some people think someone who has a different point of view is evil these days. But the point is, why would we use words to limit us when we can expand our spirits, our hearts, and our souls by expanding our identity, not limiting ourselves in some way? And I want you to know most people define themselves by how they've behaved. And here's what I want you to consider. Whatever people do, they're doing the best they can with the resources they have in that moment. Are there smart people who do stupid things? My bet is you're a smart person. You've probably done stupid things. I sure have. Are there, people that are not seemingly high intelligence who do some really bright things? Of course they do. Is it possible for a really mean person you consider mean to be really nice? Yeah, when they're in a really nice state, they will be. Is it possible for a really nice person to be mean? Of course. Everybody's done it in some time. But the difference is your identity. So, if you think of someone who's having, quote, an identity crisis, what is that? They turn a certain age and they quickly question everything they had accepted. A belief is something you feel absolutely certain about. You don't believe something if you start to question it. You produce doubt. And so sometimes there are certain stages of life where someone suddenly goes out and has this identity crisis and they buy a sports car or whatever the case may be, and they change their hair and they do everything else. But what's really happening is they're trying to redefine themselves, having defined themselves a long time ago. And we all have these ways of defining ourselves, but let me give you an example of just how powerful it is. Now, the downside of this, of course, is you can create a negative identity for yourself. You can have an identity that says, let's say you've put things off a lot, and you're about to go do something and you get fearful. Everybody has the fear of failure, the fear of something, of the unknown. And the last minute, you don't do it. And then you say, I'm really going to do this. And you do it again and again. After a while, you don't want to disappoint yourself. So you might develop a new identity and say, I'm a procrastinator. Well, once that's who you are, that behavior is going to be consistent.
I think it's just so beautiful to pierce that veil and to be open and willing enough to have an experience for yourself. And that experience, it schooled me, it opened me, it rearranged everything I'd ever heard. Like it was like they were such beautiful people, and they were so in service. They wanted to take care of us at every moment. I remember leaving there and just being so struck at how I felt ushered through this beautiful culture, how I felt welcomed into this home, into this prayer circle of these women, how I felt seen, how I felt accepted, even though I was the only blonde-eyed, blue-eyed girl in the room. You know?
Our identity is more powerful than even the truth. Your beliefs about people shape your relationships with them. And then your beliefs, of course, about yourself are the most powerful of all. People are not their behaviors. You are not their behaviors. We've all done dumb things, doesn't mean you're dumb. We've all done smart things, doesn't mean you're absolutely smart, right? It's not that black and white, it's not that simple, but that's the way the mind tries to reduce things. That's the reductionism of the mind, not your heart, not your soul, not your spirit, but the mind. It's trying to keep things this or that. It's chopping it down, it's reductionism. You don't want to fall for that. But I want you to know you can also expand your identity, not by telling yourself, I'm great, I'm great, I'm great, but by doing something. It's like self-esteem. I hear so many parents talk about, I want my kids to have so much self-esteem, and people get in a certain emotional state. They're scared, they're angry, they're afraid, they're whatever, and they behave a certain way. But if they do that several times, they might say, that's the kind of person I am. And once you do, it's self-fulfilling. Or worse, you know somebody and they were mean to you sometime, and they're harsh, oh, they're such a mean, harsh person. Well, I bet they're different with their child. I bet they're different when they're not under stress. I bet so
all in all, like I want people, I'm all for self-expression. I want people to be anything they want to be in every moment. We get one shot at this vast life experience. Why not be all? And that's why Tony would argue, like the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to expand our identity. And how do you do that? You do something that is inconsistent with your self-image. Like Tony always says, do something you would never do.
Yes.
And why is that so hard for people? Because we have these constraints somehow that get put on us through, I guess, conditioning, through our childhood, through our past, a whole notion of psychobabble, or maybe we just like we're a reflection of our culture and the times that we live in, and so we are the water that we're swimming in. Mm-hmm. Like I think that's really what the heart of even personal development and self-help in this industry that has a lot of criticism around what are you really doing all this for. It's like I think what are we really doing all this for? It's to expand our identity while we can and be as much as we can before time runs out. Something like that.
When we give somebody an identity, we limit our ability to actually reach that soul or that spirit, and we limit our own world. And we put ourselves in a place of judgment of others, and when we're judging others, who's the first person we're going to judge? Ourselves. So this is an area that deserves taking the time to think, really looking at all the consequences of identity, and also understanding it's the controlling force in your life. So it's controlling decision-making. It's controlling your perceptions of yourself. It's controlling perceptions of others. And here's one more thing it controls: how far you grow or fall. So I'll give you a metaphor I like to share with people. Think of it this way. If you set a thermostat on the wall, and you set that thing at 68 degrees, and let's use 68 degrees as the metaphor, not for your goals in life, but your comfort zone, which is your identity, right? You might have these huge goals, I want to be this, but have you ever said, I'm going to go do this, and then some voice inside your head says, who are you kidding, right? Who are you kidding is, that's a big reach beyond who you are in your mind at that time. So say 68 degrees represents where you're comfortable financially, not where you want to be, but what you're used to, your current identity. You might say, I want to be financially free, but you're financially struggling, and that's your identity inside your head. You want financially free, but you're financially struggling. You can do the same thing for your body. It's not your ideal, it's what you gotten used to. It's your identity, it's who I am.
And from my experience, I'd either heard or maybe read, and so it's all a projection. You know, I hadn't had, and I think this is something so unique, and a lot of times that's missed in today's society, is that, you know, we have identities on individuals or groups of people, but it's like if you actually met and sat down and had an intimate exchange with somebody from that community or somebody from that religion or somebody from that demographic. And, you know, I had the privilege, Tony and I met with this group of people, and we were doing an event there actually. And, you know, the men and the women, they had separate experiences. Tony went to the mosque with this group of gentlemen and had a really lovely experience. And for myself, I was, maybe there was about 100 women. Everybody was in burqas, and so I wore a burqa to be respectful, just entering that reality and that culture. These beautiful women from all ages, they taught me what they were doing, and washing their hands and washing their mouth and washing their feet, and gave me the context of the why. You know, they held me, they fed me, they prayed with me. It was, when I think back to like just spiritually really